everybody. Thanks for being with us here again today. Today, I have a special guest with me. Her name is Merryl Fulmer. She's well known in the southeastern part of Pennsylvania, as well as New Jersey and in Delaware. Many people know her as the Registry lady, for lack of good words, but she has a wealth of knowledge in all different fields. And she's also developed her own programs to further your education in the radiology field into different modalities. So Merryl, thank you so much for taking the time this morning to be with me today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So Merryl, I just did a little brief synopsis of you, but can you share further your background in the field?
Sure. Well, let's see, where to begin. I went to X-ray school immediately after graduating high school. And that was in 1973. And so I was in X-ray school for 2 years, 1973 to 1975. And that's where I've been ever since, teaching in one way, shape, or form in radiology.
Wow. So, I mean, 1975 to now, that's like what, a span of, almost 50 years, close to 50 years, which is crazy. So you've seen it all, you went from film processing all the way working your way through CR and DR. So you've seen the span of time.
And when I teach, I sort of refer to procedures that are either extinct or on the endangered species list. That's and so when I talk to students and I say, when I started, CT hadn't even existed because CT didn't start until the 80s. And MRI was something that was just a figment of somebody's imagination. I remember sitting at a lecture at the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and there was the presenter was saying, we'd have MRI, but you'll never see it. There's too many problems, in terms of the installation and so forth and so on. So students can't imagine a time before any of this stuff. They're like, really? And they certainly can't imagine film screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad to have had all those experiences. And that's what's kept me interested all these years, because it's constantly changing.
Right. Yeah. So you're registered then in X-ray, and then can you walk me through the other modalities that you are registered in as well?
Mammography, MRI, CT, quality management. And the only exam that I took and didn't fail, because I used to like taking them, as an educator, I didn't have to take them. I just wanted to take them so I could learn about the modality, because I knew that I wasn't going to be really working in the modalities, although I could have, but my favorite place to be is teaching. And that I was able to do, not having to be in the clinical setting to do that. As we discussed earlier, around my dining room table, a lot of teaching got done.
Right. So with all those different ones, you had said that you sat for the boards, but you haven't specifically worked physically in that field?
That's correct.
Or maybe you did, and maybe just for like a short period of time.
Well, there was a point in time when, in order to sit for the exam, you didn't have to document clinical proficiency. Now you do. You have to have at least 16 hours of structured education in order to take the exam. So I've never clinically done MRI.
Okay.
I can teach it. I wrote the course on it. I have a pacemaker, so I couldn't do it, even if I wanted to. And see, my of all the other modalities, well, quality management applies to everything. So I can apply my quality management knowledge and skills to everything that I do in life. But when we went digital, the registry discontinued that exam.
The quality management.
It was primarily based on film screen quality management tests. So they discontinued it, but I still maintain that certification. Mammography is my favorite, and I have worked and could work clinically in mammography. Yeah, but CT and MRI, I don't have to do it. But I do have to understand it to be able to do it. Yeah. But to be a CT tech and to have to work 24 hours, what it's involved in CT, right?
Oh, yeah. The CT techs in the hospitals that I've worked at, they're just work to the bones. especially now, because if you go into the ER, I feel like depending on what you're coming in with, there's a baseline of exams that are ordered for you, and CAT scan's always there on the forefront.
Yeah,
CT.
and it's evolving too. There's so much cool stuff happening with CT.
Yeah. So would you say you were, or as you were saying, that mammo at this point, probably out of all the modalities that you've taken the registry in or that you teach, that you like that the best?
Love it.
Do you? What is it about mammo that draws you to it?
The importance of detecting breast cancer early
Mhm.
and understanding what a patient would go through if being diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's so prevalent, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I teach that course at least 2 to 3 times a year. Many students have taken the course, and it's good. I love mammo. Just what can I tell you? I love working with women.
Yeah. So can you just bring us through your education journey? You know, starting, you said that you started as a technologist and then you worked yourself into becoming part of education. How did you transition from being a staff technologist into developing education programs?
Okay. Well, one of your questions was what inspired me to go into the field. And you're not from Philadelphia, are you? Or are you?
I'm from the Philadelphia region.
So I grew up in a neighborhood called Logan. I
Okay.
went to high school at Philadelphia High School for Girls, which is Broad and Olney. I went to X-ray school at Einstein. My radius was rather limited. And the reason why I went into radiology was my younger sister, Merryl, was born a paraplegic. I was 8 at the time. So much of my childhood was spent involved in her care because we would have to go to Moss Rehab and we'd have to do this. So I spent a lot of time in the hospital with my parents. My older sister, Carol, went into nursing, I think because of that influence. My older sister, other sister, Andy, went into medical and respiratory. And when it came to me, it was like, okay, Merrill, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I have no idea. And my parents said, well, what do you think about X-ray? And I said, I don't know. Let's give it a try.
Right.
And so that's how I entered it, just because I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and Jay, my husband will hate this, I had been dating my boyfriend for 4 years. I met him going into high school. So I knew that we were headed for marriage and I just needed a job. X-ray, you know, I went into X-ray and I fell in love with it. And I actually started my teaching while I was a student.
Oh, wow.
In X-ray school, because at the time, and again, you have no idea because you're young, but they would hire people as fluoro aides who didn't have to be registered. And they would just do fluoro, barium enemas, and upper GIs, which we did all day long. Mm-hmm. At Einstein, we had 3 fluoro rooms all going at the same time. There was this one technologist named Chris who wasn't registered and wanted to be. And I took her under my wing and I tutored her and she passed. So she was officially my first student. And I have pictures of her in some of my other presentations. It was at that point that I knew, and people said, you've got a certain talent that you need to share with the rest of the world. It was at that very point that I started teaching. And when I graduated X-ray school, I was hired by Einstein. I had a lot of experience in mammography, and we had a great world-renowned mammography department at Einstein. Jack Colinan was the director of the department, and I don't know if you know him, but he was one of the original experts in radiology. He was my program director for 1 year, and his wife, Angie Colinan, was in charge of mammography, and I had spent a lot of time in mammography in those 2 years. And then concurrent with that, there was a job opening that I was encouraged to apply for, and it was for program director at Chestnut Hill Hospital. And I'm like, program director. I'm just an x-ray tech. They were like, just go for it, just apply for it. And at the time, there weren't these strict regulations and requirements from Joint Review Committee. Anybody could take on the role. You didn't have to agree. It was crazy. So I applied for it and I got it. My very first job, 2 years out of x-ray school, was program director at Chestnut Hill Hospital. It was a fabulous job. It's still a fabulous hospital. And then over the years, I went for my associate's degree and then went for my bachelor's degree and then started for my master's degree, all along having other people pay for it because, that was one of the perks of working for hospitals.
Yeah.
So I started. I had very little. I mean, I miss doing those L5S1 spot films,
Yeah.
I miss the clinical part of it, but it's also adjunct faculty and clinical instructors. So it took me back into the hospitals on many occasions. So I've pretty much done a lot. I've done a lot. I've been program director at 4 institutions. I was a program director at Chestnut Hill, at Lyons Technical Institute, which a lot of people don't know about, but it was a very progressive organization at the time. First of all, it was privately owned, and God forbid people should make money off of x-ray programs. They later learned how to do that, but at the time, all the programs were hospital-based. And the hospital supported the program. And then when they learned that they were losing money because they have to pay a program director and they have to pay clinical instructors, that's when they started to affiliate with the colleges and made them college-based. So I've been clinical instructor, I've been program director, and my own thing, kind of this unique position. One of my favorite jobs was working for the American College of Radiology. Everybody should know ACR. They have a site in Philadelphia that does clinical research, and I worked there for 5 years. I was part of many major trials that have gone through, like the DEMIS trial, which is a significant trial for mammography. It's the trial that proved that digital was superior, equal to, or better than film screen. So it was the pivotal trial that allowed the world to convert to digital mammography. They didn't want to convert. The mammography community didn't want to because technically they were losing spatial resolution and they didn't want to do that because they felt that they would miss cancers. But anyhow, that's old business now. But that was really a cool job. And my title was clinical trials trainer. And I was the one that taught the physicians and everybody what a clinical trial was, the basis of clinical trial technology. So that was good. And then now I'm kind of like doing my own thing. I always did my own thing, but that's what I do now. I don't really report to anybody other than the responsibility to my students. But I did work at Montgomery County Community College where I brought those 4 programs that we can talk about more, the mammo, the CT, the MRI, and the vascular interventional. I was teaching those courses through Montgomery County Community College.
Yeah, so let's circle back to that. To share, as I had said previously in your introduction, about preparing students for the registry. I know from personal experience, you actually tutored me in taking my registry boards. You've been doing this for quite a long time. Going from your dining room, now you're doing it remotely or via Zoom, doing these reviews. But I did personally sit in your own dining room with myself and a few other women. When did you begin that? Were you doing that while you were doing like the ACR thing and program director?
Yes, I've always done it. Mm-hmm. And it was timeless because it could be morning, night, weekends, evenings. Although now I don't like evenings. I want to be on my sofa watching bad shows on TV.
I thought it was so great of you that you just offered your home to people to come and, prepare themselves for the exam. And I truly have to say that, as I was saying to you before we started recording, that you really did help me. There was a few things that I was questionable about, and there was something the way that you explained it, and all of a sudden it just clicked for me like that, and I was like, wow.
I hate to sound obnoxious, but I'm good. I know what I'm talking about. I know what it takes to get a student to pass their exam. And I've developed and perfected my technique. It's called the elephant technique. The concept is, and it's really very simple, and anybody can do it. Before you even get started studying, first of all, I say, how do you eat an elephant? And they look at me like I'm crazy. But how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's how you study for this exam, one bite at a time. So you have to know what the exam looks like. You have to follow what's called the content spec, which is a document that the registry puts out every 5 years, saying to you, Jen, you want to pass the boards? Know everything in this document. It really is quite simple. That's how we plan it. I organize the content specs, match it up to the elephant sheet, which is just a game plan and a schedule. And then the other thing that I do is before you even get started, we will do a pretest. And then you'll study, read and study, watch the videos, read and study. And then when you're done that topic, you'll do a post test, which is the same as the pretest. My method is quantifiable, if you know what I mean. If a student says, how am I doing? It's not based upon my gut reaction. It's based upon what was your pretest score? What was your post-test score? It's quantifiable, it's measurable. And if a student follows my plan, they will be successful. I don't guarantee that they're going to pass the boards because some people come to me with a 74 and they have to get a 75. Right. But I've had people come to me with 60s, even occasionally a 50. And it's like, I think to myself, I can't do this. Student can't do this, but I never say no. I never say no to a student. And I've had students do some miraculous improvements. You know, one student got a 61. She took it again, got a 61. I worked with her and she got like 95. I mean, it was like crazy. Wow. And then this particular student, she was originally around my dining room table. So I got her through the x-ray boards. And then about 2 years later, she says, I want to go to radiation therapy school. I really want to go to radiation therapy school. My mother died from breast cancer and I really wanted, her experience. So I said, okay, good. And she says, only on the contingency that you teach me the physics. Oh my God, I don't know radiation therapy physics, but I'm willing to learn. She sent me this huge textbook on radiation therapy and I studied it. And that's kind of what motivated me to create these other courses anyhow. I like taking something that I know nothing about, doing something with that information. Bottom line is she just graduated radiation therapy school and I tutored her through a lot of it on the radiation physics, which is not much different than X-ray physics. It's just that it includes those pair production and photo disintegration interactions that don't occur in radiology. So anyhow, I like challenges. I've tutored students in ultrasound. I've tutored students, you just name it, because learning is learning. If you get disciplined to what to do, how to do it, what resources you have. Many of my students today, and you can kind of let me know when you don't want me to talk anymore, but many of my students today, I get a lot of students from this Facebook site called ARRT prep page.
Okay.
And all it takes is one student to tell another student to tell another student. So I don't advertise at all. Today's students, I'm telling you, Jen, they don't know how to study. They fail the exam because they think that by doing questions, answers, that they're learning. They're not learning, they're just memorizing. So when I meet with them and I say, well, tell me the books that you have and that you use. And they look at me like, books? People use books? Like, where are your books? Oh, they're under my bed or they're in a box at my grandmother's house. I'm like, well, that's not the way you study. If you want to be successful, you want to pass this damn exam, well, then you're going to do what I tell you to do. And it's going to involve using books. And so I give them the direction on how to do that. You would think that it's common sense. And you would think that the schools would prepare them, but they don't. Schools, many of them, There's great schools, but then the majority of them show a PowerPoint, read verbatim from the PowerPoint, test from the PowerPoint,
Right.
and the student does great because that's all they had to do was read PowerPoint, study the PowerPoint. But that doesn't mean they do anything beyond what was in the PowerPoint. Never opening a book, and they really don't know it. But they get out of the program, and then they fail the exam. Usually students come to me if they failed twice, but now I get students that fail once, and now I get students who are still in the programs and want to be proactive. I have a student yesterday who she graduates in December and wants to get started on proper
So is it
stuff.
because she's having a hard time already with the information where she's trying to prepare herself?
Maybe a little bit, but who doesn't? You know, you never know how you're going to do, but she just wants to be as fully prepared as she possibly can be. And so they're acquiring more resources, but they don't know how to use them. They really don't. So I teach them good studying. The students think, and with all due respect, the directors push this. Oh, flag a question. If you don't know what the answer is, flag the question and come back to it afterwards. My rules, you will never, ever flag a question again. It's the worst advice that can be given. If you don't know it then, you're not going to know it 3 years down the line. And why worry about it? And there's no angels or spirits that come to you during that exam giving you the answer. As far as your energy level, you don't have it 3 hours down the road. You got it early on. All of your energy into early and never flag a question. So I don't have many rules, but I have 7 really good rules that if you follow them, one of my questions that I say to the students, these content specs, have you ever seen them? Usually they have. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you use them during the course of your studying? A 1 meaning, well, you have it. A 10 meaning that you eat, sleep, and breathe with it. And they're like, oh, a 2. Well, here's the deal. It becomes a 10. It's your Bible for studying. Anyhow.
How many students would you say at this point that you've helped along from the span of the 70s up until now? How many students?
1,000.
So the different programs that you've developed on your own, you were saying how certain didactic work is required for some of the modalities. Do you have to have your programs accredited by the ARRT for that?
My programs are approved by the ASRT. They're called RECEAMs, organizations that can approve a program. Like the ACR is a RECEAM, the Ultrasound Society is a. So you submit your work to those organizations and they will review it and make suggestions on how to change it and then give you credit approval for it. Once it's approved, the ARRT will accept it. It's not as if the ARRT approves it. The ARRT accepts it.
Do they, I guess, assign CE credits to it? Do they?
Yes. My mammo, CT, MRI, and vascular are all approved by the ASRT for 40 continuing education credits. One of your questions had to do with modifying the program. Right. Well, whenever it's necessary to modify it and consistent with the time that it has to be renewed, like most of my programs, I have on a 3-year renewal, which is the maximum. And after 3 years, you have to resubmit or modify and then resubmit it. And I just prefer ASRT because that's my favorite organization in the whole wide world. It's a great organization. Everybody should be a member of it. And, you know, they've done more for me professionally over the years. Like when we went from film screen to digital, I had to modify the program. And now that we have DBT, digital breast tomosynthesis, I need to modify it again. So my programs are absolutely up to date and current.
For the question, though, just for everyone that's listening, the question that she's speaking about that I had provided to her earlier was that when she had originally developed these programs and up until now, does she have to go back and modify it in terms of the technology advancements? And obviously you just answered that question, but just to share with everyone exactly what we were discussing.
And let me add, excuse me, but let me add, I've got 4 40-hour programs. For each of those programs, I also created 16-hour programs because the registry minimum is 16 hours of structured education. But as an educator, 16 hours of MRI is not going to get you very far in terms of success on the exam, nor success in the practice. 16 hours in my mind and is an introduction to the modality or a register review for the modality. And furthermore, with mammography, there's really little utility for 16 hours because mammography is the modality that's not only governed and regulated by the ARRT, but it's regulated more importantly by the government, the FDA, under the Mammography Quality Standards Act, which is referred to as MQSA. And I don't know if you're familiar with MQSA. Under that regulation, they require 40 hours. That's why when I did the other courses, I thought, well, if 40 hours is significant and acceptable for mammo, I'm going to make the other 3 courses 40 hours as well. I maintain my accreditation and I pay for renewal so that they can all be active in case somebody needs it.
This episode is brought to you by xraytechnicianschools.com. If you're considering a career in X-ray, visit xraytechnicianschools.com to explore schools and to get honest information on career paths, salaries, and degree options.
So Merrill, is there anything here that you would like to further discuss, maybe that we haven't hit on yet in terms of education and or the programs that you run?
Well, one of my recent new projects is there's this exam that is administered by many of the colleges that will determine the student has to pass this HESI exam. And it's really hard. And the students, many of them are failing it. After spending 2 years studying radiologic technology, and after spending these recent students $68,000 on their tuition, if they don't pass this exam, they're going to be kicked out of their programs. And I really have an issue with that, but I'm not the one to make any of these decisions about it. So anyhow, I've been doing some HESI preparation. As a matter of fact, today at noontime, I have 2 students who failed it. And if they don't pass it by Friday, and when did they contact me? Last Friday. So I've got 1 week to get them on board to know enough to pass it. It's crazy because it puts me, yesterday I gave them 3 hours. The day before I gave them 3 hours. And normally I don't have that kind of time in that short notice.
And what type of exam is this HESI thing? I've never heard of it.
It's a comprehensive exam that supposedly determines their predictability for passing the registry. But yet when I look at some of the questions, I'm not a fan. That's all I can tell you. I'm not a fan. It has them spending time studying material that's not consistent with the content specs. It's just an unfair torture, in my opinion. If the teachers had prepared them properly, they wouldn't fail the HESI. Why are they failing the HESI? And furthermore, they shouldn't get kicked out of their program. So anyhow, that's like all of a sudden this new thing that's happening and very real and very threatening.
So do you think that they're using this as a tool because a lot of programs, well, I guess they have to share what their pass-fail rate is in terms of the registry and how prepared a student was entering into that. So do you think that they're using this as a tool and possibly having students kicked out if they believe that they won't pass the boards?
It's an easy way to get rid of a student. By the same token, it does put a mark on their integrity and on their statistic rates that they have to kind of report. Now, I did hear through the grapevine, because this is the 3rd student in the last week and a half that's contacted me, but they're from the same program. And I don't want
So that's
these
not
guys.
saying much.
No, if they don't pass, at least graduate the program, they're never going to have a chance to sit for the registry in the first place.
Right.
And then their entire 2 years and their entire life savings is down the tubes, and it's not right. But
No.
I can only get so involved politically. What I can do is work my butt off and work their butt off to get them to pass. So it's really very crazy. With these two students, I just made up a list, 65 questions that both of them got wrong. And they're the questions that I'm going over with them. But there's just not enough hours in there's no time. So I might have a new approach to recruiting students to prepare for the HESI better, because they give them a week and their lives depend upon it. I also just had a student, and I've had a few of them over the years, but the limited licensure exam, are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, limited licensure. There is an exam that's administered by the registry, but these folks that are limited in licensure, they can never work in a hospital, but they can work in outpatient departments, and it's very limited. Like they never have to learn fluoro procedures because they're never going to be doing them in an outpatient. So I had this, I call them kids. Everybody's my kid. It doesn't matter how old you are. I helped him successfully pass his HESI. His limited exam. It's a crazy exam.
Out of all the students that you've had pass through in this time, is there anyone particular that kind of stands out in your mind? Maybe situation that you were in with?
They're all good. There's no such thing as a bad student. There's just bad schools, bad directors, and they're not bad either, but it's just a matter of smart learning.
Yeah.
Well, I say to them, this whole issue with the books. Would you go to a brain surgeon? God forbid you have a brain tumor. Would you go to a brain surgeon that never opened his book? They're like, no, of course not. Why would a patient go to you if you're not opening your books?
Right.
And the bottom line is, if you don't open them, you're not going to pass this thing. My advice to anybody out there is to give yourself time. Anything can be accomplished, but it's tough to accomplish it in 5 days. And so don't wait till the last minute. I got an email yesterday from a student. She had already signed up for my courses, and I will mention my website, when I'm done so that people listening can check it out. She had signed up months ago, never scheduled any of the classes. She told me her mother's been sick and she's been taking care of her mother. And, life happens.
Yeah.
She has till December. And I said, well, I'm glad you're calling me now. There's a lot we can get done between now and December, but don't call me up the beginning of November and say, let's get started, because that's not fair to you and it's not fair to me. Right. I had a student 2 weeks ago who told me that during school, COVID happened. She didn't have clinical, and she had been diagnosed with melanoma. I said, wow, that's a lot. She says, and I have to take the exam next Friday. I said, well, do this. On Monday morning, call the registry and explain to them your situation. Just maybe they'll give you an extension, because they did give extensions for COVID. But for the most part, the registry is unrelenting. They cannot make exceptions. So I said, call me after you talk to the registry on Monday. So she did call me, and she did say, sorry, I have to take this test. I'm like, okay, here we go, girlfriend. And we had a week of me. And again, I have a full schedule of other students too, but yeah. I managed to spend as much time as I could with her. She managed to work her butt off, and she passed it with a 75.
Yay, that's great.
And it's kind of like I felt like I saved her life, which I did. Yeah. And that's a really good feeling when you can impact somebody's life and make it different. Like, oh, I couldn't have done it without you. Well, with some of the students, it's true. They couldn't have done it without me. And that makes me feel so gratified that I can help somebody. So at some point a few years ago, the registry made me get a website. And I'm like, I don't need a website. But I had to for registry purposes.
Uh-huh.
So I do have a website now, which will enable anybody that's interested to sign up. But feel free to contact me for questions. I don't want you to just sign up. You can sign up for the post-primary exams, those exams. You can sign up for tutoring. And the website is www.merrylfulmer.com.
There you go.
And that's it.
If you could give one piece of advice to, current students, prospective students, or even technologists who are now in the field looking to further their career, what would it be?
It would be make sure you love what you're doing. The field offers so many different options, not only the specific modalities, but what you do within those modalities. Do you want to be a technologist? Do you want to go into research? Do you want to go? We need somebody's got to take my spot, girlfriend.
Yeah.
I need somebody who likes to.
I don't know what the world's going to do without you.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Not like you're going anywhere. No.
I love what I do. Listen, what is it? Is today Sunday? It's Sunday. You saw what I'm looking at out my window. I've got these 2 students at 12 for the HESI thing. And then I've got another student at 2. So my husband's busy. He does his thing, but he's right in the room. I do my thing. I'm happy.
Right.
And I'm not a sit on the beach kind of person. As long as I'm here, my kids are good. I'm happy.
Right.
I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you asked me to do this.
My pleasure.
Just love what you do. The worst thing is you've been in contact with people that they're so nasty. They don't like what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Then don't do it. I think the field of diagnostic imaging certainly offers those opportunities.
Well, Merryl, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your education journey and everything that you've helped everyone in the world with in terms of radiology. If you ever need help with anything, obviously you can hear Merryl is the jack of all trades when it comes to the field of radiology, and she just has a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much.
What you're doing now is amazing too. It's unique. No one's done it before, and I'm real proud of you. You're one of my kids. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Skeleton Crew, brought to you by XrayTechnicianSchools.com. On the next episode, join us to explore the present and the future of the rad tech career in the field of radiology.